no one size fits all or a simple fix when it comes to your well-being. Hi, my name's Josephine, founder of Positivity Center and Wellbeing Consultant, and a person figuring out how to be my best. So join me in conversation with friends, sharing what works for them, and then listen to what works for others so you can create something that will work for you.
So we unfortunately had a death in the family over the weekend. So my mom's twin sister passed away very suddenly. So I am at my parents' house trying to like not be in the way, but also just to be here to help in case people need help. So it's been kind of tricky because they don't need help all the time. So I'm still trying to do like some normal stuff. And my son is here with me. So like we were just out playing earlier, which was nice. But it was just like my aunt had spina bifida. So like she was born with it and she couldn't walk her whole life. And she had like a life expectancy of like 18 months when she was born. And she got to 62. So she just like the strongest lady I ever met in my life. So I'm happy to be here to celebrate her and be there for my mom, who's never really, like, both of my grandparents are alive still and all of these things. So my mom has never really dealt with any kind of severe grief. And I don't like the twin thing is very like they're identical twins. So it's like, it's just a thing and it's not explainable.
Yeah, there must be a different like attachment that we don't necessarily all experience. Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know, but like to the degree, like my aunt had a lot of health problems her whole life. And like my mom used to get a sore back when my aunt was passing a kidney stone, and like their energies were just very much connected. So I can't, and they were best friends. They talked every day, right? Like it's just going to be a big hole for her. So
it is the best, well, I'm sorry. I know it is like, there's kind of like an unexplained, like there's not a set way to think or be or do or, right. It's just, it's kind of messy and all over the place. Yeah.
It's very interesting because like I've been on this grief journey personally. I've had I had a miscarriage in August. I had another one in December. And so I'm on this weird, 4-month grief cycle, which is very annoying. And I would like to get out of it. The good news of that is that I'm kind of I'm very familiar with how to deal with my own grief right now, which has been helpful because like for me, I need to be alone and my husband knows that. So he just takes Nicholas and they go and do some fun daddy son thing. And I get to just sit alone and watch usually a musical and cry. And that's how I process it. And so I did that on Saturday, and then we came up yesterday and we went to see my grandparents, and my grandparents, they can't drive or anything anymore. So they weren't able to get into we're in Edmonton. My grandparents live in Westlock, which is like 45 minutes north. So they couldn't get in. Just my mom was there, which I think it was nice for my mom. Just like have that special time together at the end. But yeah, it's just nuts. And now my grandparents are like, well, now we don't need to stay here. We might as well look at like seniors facilities in Calgary, which is where all the grandkids are. And Tracy, you can help us with that, right?
Actually, you know what? I really just have to say, first of all, I feel like we're already recording.
Oh, we are already recording.
I know we're recording, but like I usually do an intro, but I actually feel like, do we always set life up to be just so? Like sometimes life throws us the curveballs, let's call them, the lemons to make lemonade with, whatever it is. And if you're having a rough time, I'm having a rough day. If it wasn't for our call today, I don't know if I would have got out of bed.
And it's really interesting because I'm doing a course right now as well. And it's run by this gentleman in Scotland. And we had a one-on-one call this morning, and I always really enjoy talking to him. So I'm like, I'm going to get up I'm going to do this call, even though all this stuff is all over the place right now. Plus, I want to tell him this is what's going on for me, and I'd like to be that person.
Yeah.
So I did that, and he was like, why are we having this call today? And I was like, one, I appreciate how supportive, like my network has just like so supportive, right? They're just there for you when you need it. And quite honestly, I've worked really hard to build that in the last year and a half. So it's made a big difference for me. But there are still, the thing about grief is that some moments is overwhelming, right? And oh my gosh, kids are so smart, right? So my son just turned 4 a couple weeks ago. And I came downstairs the other day just crying because I had just got the news and I was so sad. And he was like, Mommy, it's okay to be sad. And he came across and gave me a hug and then was like, you'll be happy again.
Oh,
I was like, and this is the thing, we have people in our lives, we have moments in our lives that still bring us joy, even though we're dealing with grief, and it doesn't lessen the grief or how important that person was. And there's still moments of light, and to ignore the moments of light makes it a lot harder to get through the grief. So I'm here because Josephine, you always bring me light. And hopefully I can bring light with my journey to some other people.
And I totally felt the same. I'm like, it's just going to be a beautiful time, even though we just have a short time with Tracy today, but I just knew it would be beautiful because it's so interesting. And I had this conversation recently with a friend of mine, like how we know somebody to be for us, we kind of shift how we show up for that person, because I feel the same way about you. Every conversation I've ever had with you, you just bring so much light and energy to it. And so I love that. And I also love that you're cool to just show up with whatever else is going on, right? And just be real with it. Because I think that's sometimes what we think, that because we're generally speaking, because I get that too. I'm like, you're such a positive person. I'm like, do you know the real me? You know?
Well, and again, like this is the thing that's beautiful, right? Is like I would call myself a positive person. Does that mean I'm happy all the time? Absolutely not. Right? That's not where positive people find their spark, right? It's because we pay attention and we invest in time doing the things that light us up and being surrounded by the people who light us up. And our time together today is like 30 minutes. And that could be all it takes to light up a day.
Yeah.
Right? It's beautiful.
So in the light of being in a really challenging time that is full of a lot of, I guess you could call them negative, call them messy, whatever you want to call them, dark emotions. When you go through loss, it's weird. It feels icky. You kind of don't want it to be there, but it's there regardless. And, you talk a lot about network, like how is that helping you just right now, even just today? I mean, this is probably a good point, but you've talked to 2 people, but how is your network helping you through, loss right now?
So, I mean, for those people who don't know me very well, I run a community called Your Business Peeps. And it's a community I created because I saw so many other communities that were just really created around accomplishing a thing. And I was like, but what about these spaces where we actually feel safe and share the messy bits? And we're not just focused on a business outcome. We're focused on being successful as a whole human. Where are they? And I couldn't find one, so I made one. This is how I do. Like, I don't, let's be honest, I didn't try very hard. I did try a little bit, and then I'm like, there's clearly not enough of them anyway, so I'll just start my own. And the thing that's really interesting about it, it's a small community right now. A lot of people who I interact with very closely. For example, like one of them I was supposed to have coffee with yesterday, and we were messaging on Saturday, and I was like, she's like, are you still good for coffee tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah, assuming I don't have to go to Edmonton because this is what is going on right now. And she was like, yes, of course. And we made our plan, right? Like assuming everything was going to be fine. Everything was not fine. And so I told her, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to meet tomorrow. And then while we were coming up yesterday, I got a text message from her that was just about not expecting a reply, just sending you love. Tara Argo, who's the co-founder of the Your Business Peeps community with me, has been messaging me constantly just to let me know that I'm in her thoughts. And if I need any help with business related things, she is there. And it's just even being able to have, I'm a sharer, right? I like for people to know what's going on with me. I don't like to go through things by myself. It's not my successful way of journeying through something. And so it's amazing to just have this little community of, I think there's about 30 people in it right now, where you can just be like, hey, I need someone else to know. Like, I need somebody to know I'm going through this, because I'm not fine. It might seem fine right now. And I'm okay right now, but I don't know, 20 minutes from now, I might not be fine. Yeah. And I need someone to know I'm not fine. And even just like knowing someone else knows, it just makes you feel less alone. Yeah. And being able to have people you can tell, like, I don't know what help I need right now. I just needed you to know that this is where I'm at. Yeah. And they legitimately care.
Yeah, exactly. And then it opens the door. I mean, you don't have to share every single bit, right? But if you share what's going on, I actually remember going to get my teeth cleaned, my dental hygienist, he asked me how my summer was. And I'm like, you know what? I don't really think I want to answer that question. How about you tell me how your summer was? Plus, I'm supposed to sit here with my mouth open anyways and not talk. So anyways, he starts to talk to me, and by the end of the time of my getting my teeth cleaned, he ends up playing a song called Goodnight Josephine. He gets his phone out, and it opened up a moment for, and this is actually sadness, and the research around sadness, that is emotion. It opens up places for intimacy and relationship. And I was just like, wow, that was just so cool. And everyone I tell that story to, they're like, who was that? I'm like, yeah, my dental hygienist, like, it just finds, and it's in spur of the moment, surprising situations that people can show up for you when they at least know a little bit, right? So you do have to open up a little bit of you and be a little bit vulnerable. You don't have to, like I said, share everything, but yeah. So I'm so glad that everyone is able to pour into you, and that, what you need will come to you, and you'll then know who can serve you in that need, because you're open enough and vulnerable, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like, a lot of us spend the legitimate amount of time on social media nowadays, right? And there's so much perfection that goes into that, and we think like, wow, look at all these people, and even when they're like, and here's a post about my struggles, right? And you're like, well, that's just your like balanced marketing plan telling you that you should be authentic, right? But at the same time, it's not a good playground. It's not a good playground to just be like, you know what, sometimes I'm fine, sometimes I'm not. It's like one or the other when you're there. And I don't know, for me specifically, it's not a good place for me to, well, I have a lot of very supportive people in my network, such as you on LinkedIn. It's just not like, I just would rather not. Does my content schedule say, like, I'm an entrepreneur, right? Does my content calendar say post today? It sure does. And am I going to? Absolutely not.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, when people don't post, I'm like, something's going on, like in the background that they're not sharing. So one of the things you actually said, and I really want to make sure we make time for it in this conversation, is you said that there are still times where you're going to light up and feel moments of joy, even though you're experiencing some grief. So tell me about that, because sometimes people, when they're experiencing grief, have a tendency to feel guilty, actually, for feeling some moments of joy within that. So maybe you can just share your experience right now, and what is creating moments of joy for you, and how you're processing that emotionally.
Yeah. So one of the strongest ones for me is that, so when I had my first miscarriage, I was concerned that there was something wrong. And so when I went for my ultrasound, I said to my husband, I need you to come with me, because I'm not confident that I'm going to be fine. And if it is fine, then great, you're there and you get to see pictures of the baby, right? Like, there's no downside. So we went, and it was not fine. And my son was at my in-laws, and we're sitting in the car, like, what do we do? Like, do we leave him there for dinner? Do we go pick him up because we know he'll make us feel better? Do we not go pick him up because we know he's going to distract us and we should just like sit and feel the pain? Like, we had no idea. We had no idea what to do. So we were like, you know what, let's just go pick him up, because at least being around him, he will, like, his energy just kind of makes you feel happy. But the thing that happened is, so like we went there, I was clearly not fine. Okay, like my father-in-law is like the classic strong silent type. And we went in, and like he didn't say anything to me. He was like, I was there, he was there. I went in, I was talking to my husband's mother, blah blah blah, and she's very like, what's next, what do you do? And I'm like, I don't know the answer to any of these questions. And then we came out of the backyard, and my father-in-law was just standing in the front yard, and I was the last one to come out of the backyard, and he just like grabbed me and hugged me and wouldn't let me go. And I was like, I don't know that I would have ever had a moment like that with my father-in-law if not for that grief, right? Like, that's a moment, that was how he was expressing his grief for the situation. And he was just like, I could tell from your face the moment you got out of the car. You didn't even need to say anything. And I was like, it taught me like how perceptive he is, right? Like how much he loves deeply, even though he is that strong, silent type. And I wouldn't trade that, right? I wouldn't have said like, I'll not have grief and then not have that moment, right? That's such a beautiful moment in my life. And so that was one of love. And one yesterday, this was like so fun. So my son, who just turned 4, my husband introduced him to the song Shake Your Bon Bon by Ricky Martin. So he just goes around the house like, shake your bon bon, shake your bon bon. And we were at my grandparents' house. My grandfather is like 88. He is very slow moving, like he has a walker. He goes very slow. Nicholas was shaking his bon bon. And then so he was like, Guido, come on, shake your bon bon. So my grandfather like kind of hunched over his walker, right? Like making these teeny tiny like butt wiggles. And I'm like, again, like I wouldn't trade that, right? Like that's a moment I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. And it's in those moments where I find, especially when it's related to grief, you actually find that gratitude, right? Like I'm grateful that I knew this person and all of these people are attached to their life, because otherwise I wouldn't have this moment. And it's the spark. It's a spark of light in a dark place. And we all know that we can't find light if we ignore the sparks. So it's just, even if you look at it percentage wise, right? You may be like, oh, I'm experiencing grief like 90% of the time, but I find these little moments in a nice text I got from a friend, an extra long hug that I got from my dad, right? Like things that I don't get on the regular that mean a lot to me. And I can still celebrate and be grateful for those things. And I can be extra grateful for the person who has passed, because without them, this moment wouldn't exist. So I think just a couple examples, but I didn't really address how to feel not guilty, but I think it's really just part of we can always decide to feel guilty, right? Like I could be like, wow, I just had this amazing moment with my grandfather. And like, I don't know how much longer he has, right? And I can feel guilty because like my aunt needed to pass, or I can feel grateful because of that, right? So
I don't know
think
if
when it comes to
I don't think everybody feels guilty, but it is a common thing that I find in my work. People talk to me about when we do, like, because I do this little coping with grief thing, and a lot of times people are like, how do I actually move forward? How can I do anything? And so often I just talk about honoring the grief or the person or whatever it is that you've lost, and doing something in honor of it, not in spite of it. So with your father-in-law,
one of the things, I've been working with a grief counselor, right? So one of the things that she said to me is that when grief is new, there's lots of remembering with sadness. So a lot of your emotions are tied to remembering a thing and you feeling sad because now that person is not there. And part of the process is moving through that. You have to experience that, but more often remembering with love instead of remembering with sadness. And there's so much love when we look for it, right? There's so many things to remember with like such. My aunt had a favorite video of my son that she always watched. So we were watching it over and over today. And then my son started acting it out. It's like his 2-year-old self. And now he's acting it out. And it's just like, it's a wonderful memory. And it's not bad to have wonderful memories about the people we love.
So here's the thing. So we're coming close on time, and I'm just trying to think in my head, how do you like bring this kind of a conversation to a close, because it just feels like a never ending kind of conversation. And the fact of the matter is, you know, we're always going to be faced with some loss of some kind throughout our whole entire lives. And I really love how you said that your therapist was helping you, you know, remember with love. And so what are some of the ways maybe that we could just sort of end with that? Like, what are some of the ways that you do remember with love right now?
You know, which is one, and I'm a big believer in that everybody processes differently, right? So these are some of the things that I have found myself remembering with love. And I think so specifically, I want to share this one because some people might think it looks like remembering with sadness, but it's actually remembering with love, because based on the feeling I'm feeling. I started implementing these daily 30-minute mindset walks. And I don't do anything. I don't listen to music. I don't listen to audiobooks, podcasts, whatever. It is just a walk. It is my time with nature, even though I live in the suburbs, to just be. It's just my just be time. And every once in a while, I find myself not like ugly crying, but crying, right? And I'm crying because I'm happy that I'm remembering something about the person that I've lost, or I'm thinking about a gift that that person has given me that has made me a better person. And I cry, and that's okay, right? Like, it's crying. We all know there's such a thing as happy tears, right? These are happy tears. I just wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it. I would never say like, take these gifts back and I would rather have that person back, right? I wouldn't. It's not a good trade for me. This is what it's supposed to be like right now. I do believe that the universe delivers what is meant to be. And so whether in a religious foundation, or you believe in the universe or fate or whatever you might call it, I believe that when people have done what they were supposed to do, then they can move on. And that means I haven't done what I'm meant to do yet. So that's a challenge for me. But it's just like, it can look like tears. It can look like laughter. I like to express through art and music, specifically through dance. And so like, I will dance. I will dance my expression, my gratitude for people. And I feel like that is honoring them to me. And I feel like, to me, music and dance just has like so much love. It just is a love blob. And so when I express that way, to me, it is love. For other people, perhaps not. Perhaps you do happy tears and other people don't understand it. And it's not for them to understand. It's for you to know, it's for you to feel the love in you. And however that is being expressed, maybe it's through writing, maybe it's through a conversation with another person. It could be, there's many ways that different people express, and just try them on. I mean, I'm a personal branding coach as well, right? I tell people constantly, like, try it on. If you like it, keep doing it. If you don't like it, stop it. Yeah. Like, you don't have to do it. If being alone and crying and watching musicals is not a thing that helps you process your grief, don't do that again, right? But you can try it. Or just try, like, if something is, you're like, you know what, I think I need this right now, try it. And if you're wrong, give yourself permission to let it go and try something else. Because my journey with grief is very much like a figure it out, figure it out, figure it out, figure it out. Oh, okay, I got it.
Yes.
Like,
Love that.
it's not linear at all. It's not like you're building on it. It's like you're figuring out what is your way to deal with grief. And it was really interesting. I know I talk a lot about this, but so like my husband and I, when we got together, neither of us had experienced grief. Oh, and then all of a sudden we experienced this grief, but we're experiencing it completely differently, right? And you're like, wow, okay, so I can respect that I am dealing with it this way. I can respect that you're dealing with it that way, but I can also respect that we are not compatible in dealing with this together at this moment. And that's okay. This is what I'm learning with my family right now. I don't know how any member of my family deals with grief. I have to learn that. They might not even know how they deal with grief. They have to learn it as well. And it's creating space, being available when you can be available, not necessarily. This is why I give myself time alone. Because I'm like, if I go to everybody right now, I'm going to want to try and be emotionally available to them. And I'm not. So I should just keep to myself. These are things you learn. They're not things you innately know about yourself until you've experienced it, unfortunately. So give yourself space to grow and learn about the amazing human that you are.
Yeah, that's so well said. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tracy, and just being real and raw. And I'm sure that many listeners are going to learn from your experience. So again, in a dark moment, may there be moments of light as well.
Yes. Thank you so much, Josephine. I appreciate you having me today.
Yeah, it's been so good. Thanks for listening to Wellbeing That Works. Before you go, take 1 minute to write down your takeaway from today's guest. And be sure to download our Wellbeing Evaluation Sheet to help you along your wellbeing journey. And if you've got something to share to inspire others, be sure to be a guest on our show. Until next time, with love and kindness.